You finally found it, little lion. Grandpa Leo. He was a legend, not just to me, but to everyone who knew him. He'd built an empire from nothing, a sprawling business that touched everything from real estate to textiles, a testament to his sharp mind and even sharper instincts. But to me, he was just Grandpa, the man who always had a Werther's original in his pocket, a story to tell, and a twinkle in his eye that made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. I remember sitting on his lap, listening to him tell stories about his early days, about the risks he took, the deals he made, the sheer grit and determination that had propelled him to success. He taught me about business, not in dry lectures, but through anecdotes, through parables, through the wisdom of a man who'd seen it all. Elena, my little lion, he'd say, his voice gruff but gentle. Never be afraid to take a chance. Never be afraid to fight for what you believe in. And never, ever underestimate yourself. He'd promised me a trust fund, a nest egg to secure my future, and a chance to pursue my dreams without the burden of financial worries. It's for you, Elena, he'd said, his eyes twinkling. A little something to help you roar. My parents, of course, were interested. They were always interested in anything that involved money, their eyes gleaming with a kind of, let's just say it wasn't exactly altruism. They'd subtly hint about their own financial struggles, the unexpected expenses, the constant need for just a little bit more. And Olivia? Oh, Olivia, my younger sister, the princess, the entitled one, the one who always got what she wanted when she wanted it. She was already planning how she'd spend my inheritance, the designer clothes, the exotic vacations, the generally fabulous life she felt she deserved. Elena's trust fund will be so helpful, she'd say, her voice dripping with entitlement. I've already picked out the perfect boutique location. It's going to be so chic, so exclusive, so Olivia, I turned 21, the magic number, the key to my financial freedom. I went to the bank, armed with my ID, my paperwork, my expectation of a brighter future. I'd like to access my trust fund, I told the teller, my voice confident, my heart filled with a mix of excitement and anticipation. The teller looked at me, her expression, let's just say it wasn't exactly encouraging. I'm sorry, Miss Winters, she said, her voice apologetic, but there seems to be a discrepancy. A discrepancy? That was their code word for your money's gone. I went home, my heart pounding, my hands trembling, my sense of security shattered. I confronted them, my parents, my sister, the people I'd trusted, the people who were supposed to care about me. Where is it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, my eyes searching theirs for some semblance of honesty. It's complicated, my mother stammered, her eyes darting away from mine. Complicated, I repeated, my voice rising, the anger starting to bubble to the surface. Or stolen. We needed it, my father said, his voice gruff, his tone, let's just say it wasn't exactly remorseful. Olivia's boutique was an investment, a family investment. An investment? I scoffed. Or a theft? You took my money, my future, my grandfather's legacy, and you used it to fund Olivia's shopping spree? Olivia just smirked, her entitlement shining through. I needed it more, she said, her voice cold, her tone. Let's just say it wasn't exactly apologetic. And just like that, my world crumbled. My trust was shattered, my future stolen, my sense of belonging ripped away. I was alone, betrayed. And let's just say I was starting to understand what Grandpa Leo meant by never underestimate yourself. Because they had, and they were about to regret it. It wasn't a graceful descent, more like a free fall, a nosedive, a crash landing into a reality I never thought I'd experience. The trust fund had been my safety net, my backup plan, my escape hatch from the kind of financial struggles my parents always seemed to be embroiled in. Now, with that gone, I was adrift in a sea of bills, debt, and a growing sense of despair. I lost my apartment, of course, couldn't pay the rent. Couldn't keep up with the lifestyle I'd naively assumed was my birthright. I moved into a tiny, dingy room in a shared house, the kind with questionable plumbing, and a landlord who looked like he could be a character in a horror movie. The jobs I'd held, the part-time gigs that had supplemented my trust fund income, were no longer enough. I needed more, anything to keep my head above water. Two, to avoid sinking completely. I worked double shifts, took on extra jobs, cleaned houses, walked dogs, tutored kids, anything that paid the bills, anything that kept me from completely losing it. But it wasn't just the financial struggle, it was the emotional weight of it all. The betrayal, the lies, the realization that my own family, the people who were supposed to love and support me, they'd basically stolen my future. The nights were the worst. I'd lie awake in my tiny, uncomfortable bed, the sounds of the city echoing through the thin walls, my mind racing, my heart aching, my my sense of self crumbling. I felt helpless, lost. And let's just say, I wasn't exactly feeling the roar Grandpa Leo had always encouraged. I was drowning, suffocating, and I was starting to believe that maybe this was it. Maybe this was my life now. A constant struggle, a never-ending battle to just survive. I looked at Olivia, of course. She was thriving, her boutique a success, her life a whirlwind of fashion shows, champagne lunches, and the kind of extravagance I'd once naively assumed would be mine. The bitterness was a constant companion, a gnawing feeling in my gut, a reminder of what I'd lost, what had been taken from me, what I could never have now. And as I spiraled, as I sank deeper into the abyss of poverty and despair, I couldn't help but wonder, was this it? Was this the end of my story? Or was there a way to fight back, to reclaim my life, to make them pay? The watch. It wasn't some fancy Rolex, not a diamond-encrusted Cartier, you know? More like an antique. A dusty old pocket watch tucked away in a forgotten box in the back of my closet. A relic from a life that seemed a lifetime ago. It was Grandpa Leo's, of course. He'd always carried it, a constant companion, a reminder of time, of its preciousness, of its relentless march forward. I found it while let's just say I was cleaning. Not because I was a neat freak, but because when you live in a tiny room with questionable plumbing, you tend to notice the dust bunnies a little more. I picked up the box, its wood worn smooth with age, its brass hinges tarnished with neglect. I opened it, my fingers tracing the inscription on the lid. To my little lion, may you always have the time to roar. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was the watch. Its gold case was scratched, its glass face slightly cracked. Its overall appearance was one of, let's just say it wasn't exactly showroom condition. But it was Grandpa Leo's, and in that moment, holding that watch, I felt a connection to him, a spark of something that had been missing since his death. I wound it, the mechanism clicking softly, the hands moving slowly, as if they were reluctant to mark the passage of time. I put it on, the chain cool against my skin, the weight of it comforting. And then things got weird. The room seemed to shift. The colors became more vibrant, the sounds more distinct. The whole atmosphere felt charged. I looked at the watch, its hands spinning wildly, the numbers blurring. The whole thing seemed to be, let's just say it wasn't exactly following the laws of physics. And then I heard it. A voice. A whisper. A voice that I knew. A voice that I thought I'd never hear again. Elena, it said, the voice raspy, weak, but undeniably familiar. Elena, my little lion! I turned, my heart pounding, my breath catching in my throat, my whole body trembling with a mixture of fear and, let's just say it wasn't exactly disbelief. And there he was, Grandpa Leo, standing in my tiny, dingy room, his form shimmering, translucent, but undeniably real. Grandpa? I whispered, my voice barely audible, my eyes wide with, let's just say they weren't exactly dry. Elena, he said again, his voice stronger now, his form solidifying, his presence filling the room with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Finally, you found me. I stared at him, my mind reeling, my heart soaring, my whole being filled with a sense of, let's just say it wasn't exactly sadness. But how? I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The watch, he said, his eyes twinkling, his smile. It was the same smile that had always made me feel like I could conquer the world. It's a bit complicated. Complicated? I echoed, my mind still struggling to process the reality of the situation. Very, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But we have things to discuss. things to do, and let's just say we have a lot of lost time to make up for. And with that, my journey began. The journey from helplessness to power, from despair to, let's just say it was going to be a hell of a ride. It wasn't a classroom lecture, not a textbook lesson, more like a masterclass with a ghost. Grandpa Leo, shimmering in the corner of my dingy room, was about to give me an education that no business school could offer. Elena, my little lion, he began, his voice a mix of affection, and let's just say it wasn't exactly patience. You've been soft, too trusting, too naive. I winced. He wasn't wrong. I'd always been the good girl, the one who followed the rules, the one who got screwed over. The world isn't a playground, Elena, he continued, his eyes hardening. It's a jungle. And if you want to survive, you need to learn how to roar. He started with the basics: finance, accounting, the language of business. He explained balance sheets, income statements, cash flow concepts that had always seemed like a foreign language to me. Money is power, Elena, he said, his voice firm, but it's also a tool. And like any tool, you need to know how to use it. He talked about investments, about risk, about the art of making money work for you, not the other way around. He explained the stock market, its intricacies, its potential for both immense profit and devastating loss. The market is a beast, Elena, he warned, but it's a beast that can be tamed. You just need to know how to whisper in its ear. He moved on to strategy, to the art of negotiation, to the subtle dance of power that underpins every business deal. He talked about leverage, about influence, about the importance of knowing your opponent, their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. Business is war, Elena, he said, his eyes gleaming with a hint of, let's just say it wasn't exactly pacifism. And in war, you need to be prepared to do whatever it takes to win. I listened, my mind racing, my notes piling up, my understanding of the business world expanding exponentially. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, and let's just say it was a hell of a lot more interesting than anything I'd ever learned in school. He challenged me, of course, questioned my assumptions, poked holes in my logic, pushed me to think differently, to see the world through the eyes of a seasoned businessman who'd built an empire from scratch. And as I learned, as I absorbed his wisdom, as I started to see the world through his eyes, I felt a shift within me, a growing confidence, a sense of, let's just say it wasn't exactly helplessness anymore. I was Elena Winters, and I was about to become, let's just say I was about to learn how to roar. The stock market? It wasn't some magical money tree, not a get-rich-quick scheme, more like a battlefield, a complex, ever-shifting landscape where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. And Grandpa Leo, my ghostly mentor, was about to teach me how to conquer it. He started with the basics, of course: technical analysis, fundamental analysis, the jargon that made my head spin. He explained charts, graphs, indicators, the tools of the trade, the weapons in my arsenal. The market is a living thing, Elena, he'd say, his voice echoing in my tiny room. It breathes, it moves, it reacts. You need to learn how to anticipate its movements, to dance with it. He showed me how to read the signs, the subtle cues, the whispers that hinted at a stock's rise or fall. He explained market psychology, the herd mentality, the irrationality that often drove investors' decisions. People are predictable, Elena, he'd say, a hint of cynicism in his voice. They fear, they greed, they make the same mistakes over and over again. You need to learn how to profit from their mistakes. He taught me about manipulation, about the subtle art of influencing the market, of creating the illusion of value, of, let's just say it wasn't exactly ethical, but it was effective. The market is a game, Elena, he'd say, his eyes twinkling. And like any game, there are rules. But there are also, let's just say there are ways to bend the rules. He showed me how to spread rumors, how to plant stories, how to create the kind of buzz that could send a stock soaring or plummeting. He explained the power of information, of timing, of knowing when to strike. Information is king, Elena, he'd say, and timing is everything. My first few trades were, let's just say they weren't exactly textbook examples of investment strategy. I made mistakes, of course. I lost money, I panicked, I almost threw my laptop out the window a few times. But Grandpa Leo was there, guiding me, correcting me, pushing me to learn from my mistakes, to refine my strategy, to become the kind of investor he knew I could be. And slowly, gradually, I started to get it. The market started to make sense, the numbers started to tell a story, the whole thing started to feel less like a gamble and more like let's just say it was starting to feel like a game I could actually win. My profits grew, my confidence soared, and my bank account started to look a little less anemic. It wasn't a fortune, not yet, but it was a start, a sign that I was on the right track, that I was finally starting to roar. And as I looked at my portfolio, the numbers glowing on my screen, I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning, the first step in a journey that would take me, let's just say it was going to take me a lot further than my parents' petty theft had ever intended. Okay, so the rivals, they weren't just competitors, not just obstacles, more like pawns in my game. Grandpa Leo, my ghostly guru, was teaching me how to play chess with the business world, and my rivals were about to become, let's just say they were about to learn that I wasn't playing checkers anymore. He showed me their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, their dirty little secrets. He dug up dirt, the kind that makes headlines, the kind that can ruin a reputation, especially in the cutthroat world of business. Everyone has secrets, Elena, he'd say, his voice a low rumble. It's just a matter of finding them and using them. He taught me how to plant rumors, how to leak information, how to create the kind of chaos that could distract, disrupt, and let's just say it wasn't exactly playing fair, but it was effective. Business isn't a tea party, Elena, he'd say, his eyes twinkling. It's a battlefield, and in battle, you need to be prepared to fight fire with fire. My first target was a pompous CEO, a man who'd built his empire on a foundation of, let's just say it wasn't exactly honesty and integrity. He was arrogant, overconfident, and ripe for a fall. I started subtly, planting whispers about his questionable business practices, leaking information about his shady dealings, creating the kind of doubt that could erode his investors' confidence. He panicked, of course. He tried to counter the rumors, to deny the allegations, to basically plug the holes in his sinking ship. But it was too late. The damage was done. His stock price plummeted, his investors bailed, and his carefully crafted image of success crumbled before his very eyes. I watched from a distance, of course, a smug smile playing on my lips, my eyes gleaming with, let's just say, it wasn't exactly sympathy. He'd underestimated me, just like everyone else. He'd thought I was just a naive little girl, a pawn in his game. He was wrong. I moved on to my next target, a ruthless businesswoman who'd clawed her way to the top, leaving a trail of, let's just say she wasn't exactly known for her compassion. She was cold, calculating, and she'd made a lot of enemies on her way up. I exploited those enemies, of course. I fed them information, I fueled their resentment, I basically turned them into my own personal army. They attacked, of course, lawsuits, investigations, bad press, the kind of things that could cripple a business, especially one built on a foundation of, let's just say it wasn't exactly ethical behavior. She fought back, of course. She was a fighter, a survivor, a force to be reckoned with. But she was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and let's just say she was starting to realize that she'd underestimated her opponent. I watched, of course. The satisfaction was, let's just say it was a delicious feeling. I was playing the game, and I was winning. I was manipulating, strategizing, and I was starting to feel a lot less like a victim and a lot more like let's just say I was starting to roar. And as I looked at my growing list of conquered rivals, I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning, the warm-up act, the prelude to the main event, because my ultimate target, the one I was really after, the one who truly wronged me, she was next. Okay, so the secrets. They weren't juicy gossip, not scandalous revelations, More like cracks in the foundation, hidden flaws, vulnerabilities, the kind of things that could bring a seemingly solid structure crumbling down. Grandpa Leo, my spectral confidant, knew them all. He'd seen it all, heard it all, and let's just say he hadn't exactly been blind to the flaws in his own family. They're not as strong as they seem, Elena, he'd say, his voice low, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness. And let's just say it wasn't exactly affection. They're built on a foundation of, let's just say it's not exactly rock solid. He told me about my parents, their hidden debts, their risky investments, their constant teetering on the edge of financial ruin. They'd always put on a good show, of course. The big house, the fancy cars, the illusion of wealth and success. They're all smoke and mirrors, Elena, he'd say, his voice laced with a hint of disgust. They've always been more concerned with appearances than reality. He revealed Olivia's secrets, her insecurities, her deep-seated fear of failure. She'd always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who'd never had to face the consequences of her actions. She's fragile, Elena, he'd say, his voice softening slightly. She's never had to. She's never had to fight for anything. She's not prepared for the real world. He told me about their past, their mistakes, their less than stellar moments. He showed me the cracks in their facades, the vulnerabilities they hid, the weaknesses that I could exploit. They're not invincible, Elena, he'd say, his eyes hardening. They're human, and humans make mistakes, and they have weaknesses. He gave me the keys to their downfall, the tools to dismantle their carefully constructed lives, the ammunition I needed to fight back, to reclaim what was rightfully mine, to, let's just say it wasn't exactly about forgiveness anymore. And as I listened, as I absorbed his secrets, as I started to see my family through his eyes, I felt a shift within me, a growing sense of power, let's just say it wasn't exactly helplessness anymore. I was Elena Winters, and I was armed with knowledge, with secrets, with the kind of information that could bring an empire crumbling down. And I was about to use it. Okay, so the transformation, it wasn't a makeover, not a new wardrobe. More like a shedding of skin, a metamorphosis, an evolution, a blossoming of the lion Grandpa Leo always knew I could be. The timid, trusting Elena, the one who'd always put others' needs before her own, was fading away. Like an old photograph, the edges blurring, the colors fading, the image itself becoming less and less distinct. In her place, a new Elena was emerging. Stronger, bolder, more, let's just say she wasn't exactly taking any crap anymore. I started small, of course, speaking up in meetings, challenging assumptions, pushing back against the general expectation that I should just smile and nod and basically be a good little girl. It surprised people, of course, my colleagues, my acquaintances, the people who'd always see me as the quiet one, the pushover, the one who never made waves. Elena, they'd say, their eyebrows raised, their voices laced with a hint of, let's just say it wasn't exactly admiration, is that really you? It is, I'd say, my voice firm, my gaze steady, my smile a little bit sharper than it used to be. I started taking risks, of course, calculated risks, informed risks, the kind of risks that Grandpa Leo had taught me to embrace. I invested in companies that others dismissed. I negotiated deals that others shied away from. I basically started playing the game on my own terms. And it paid off, of course. My portfolio grew. My influence expanded. My reputation as a shrewd businesswoman started to precede me. I was no longer the underdog, the afterthought, the girl who'd been dismissed with a wave of the hand. I was Elena Winters, and I was a force to be reckoned with. The confidence grew, of course. It was a natural byproduct of success, of proving to myself and to the world that I wasn't the timid, helpless girl they'd all assumed I was. I walked taller, spoke louder, and, let's just say, I wasn't afraid to take up space anymore. I'd been living in the shadows for too long, hiding my light, dimming my roar. But not anymore. I was stepping into the light, embracing my power, my inner lion. And as I looked in the mirror at the woman staring back at me, the woman with the determined eyes, the confident smile, the woman who was ready to take on the world, I couldn't help but feel a surge of, let's just say it wasn't exactly gratitude for my parents' betrayal. It was something more, something deeper, something that felt a lot like triumph. Okay, so the takedown. It wasn't a sudden implosion, not a dramatic collapse. more like a slow, calculated dismantling. A strategic dismantling of Olivia's carefully constructed empire, brick by fraudulent brick. Olivia's boutique, Olivia's opulence, was her pride and joy, her crowning achievement, her monument to entitlement. Built with my stolen trust fund, it was a constant reminder of their betrayal, their greed, their utter disregard for my future. And now it was my target. I started subtly, of course, planting whispers in the right ears, hinting at irregularities. Nothing concrete, just enough to sow seeds of doubt, to make people question the legitimacy of Olivia's success. I leaked information to the press, anonymous tips about questionable business practices, inflated sales figures, and let's just say a few things that could raise some eyebrows at the IRS. Olivia's opulence. Is it all smoke and mirrors? The headline screamed. Financial irregularities plague local boutique. Is Olivia's empire built on a foundation of lies? The whispers turned into murmurs, the murmurs into accusations. The carefully constructed facade of Olivia's opulence began to crack. Her investors, the wealthy socialites who'd been so eager to associate themselves with her brand, started to get nervous. They pulled out their money, one by one, their confidence shaken, their wallets suddenly feeling a lot lighter. "It's just a smear campaign," Olivia cried, her voice shrill, her princess facade cracking under the pressure. "Someone's trying to sabotage me. They're jealous of my success." But the evidence was mounting, the whispers growing louder. The cracks in her empire were becoming harder to ignore. I escalated the campaign, of course. I leaked more information, more damaging details, more fuel for the fire. I exposed the financial fraud, the inflated expenses, the shady accounting practices that had kept her opulence afloat. The government took notice, of course. Investigations were launched, audits were conducted, and the truth about Olivia's success was finally coming to light. Her suppliers, the high-end designers and manufacturers who'd been so eager to cater to her exclusive clientele, started to get cold feet. They didn't want to be associated with a business under investigation, a business that was rapidly losing its luster. They cut her off, one by one, their contracts canceled, their support vanished. Olivia's opulence was now facing a supply chain crisis, her shelves bare, her reputation tarnished, her future looking bleak. "It's not fair," Olivia wailed, her voice cracking, her princess persona completely shattered. "I built this. I deserve this. They can't do this to me." But they could. And they were. And I was the one pulling the strings, orchestrating the collapse, ensuring that every piece of her empire, every piece of my stolen future crumbled before her very eyes. The media frenzy intensified, the gossip columns gleefully chronicling Olivia's downfall, the schadenfreude palpable. The public, who'd once fawned over her opulence, now turned against her, their fickle loyalty replaced by a healthy dose of public shaming. And as I watched, as I orchestrated the final stages of her business's collapse, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. It was a reclaiming of what was rightfully mine. It was a long time coming. Okay, so the unraveling. It wasn't a slow fade, not a gentle decline, more like a catastrophic implosion. Olivia's opulence, once the symbol of her success, her entitlement, her stolen future, was now crumbling around her, piece by agonizing piece. The shelves were bare, the once chic boutique now looked more like a going-out-of-business sale, the air thick with desperation, and the lingering scent of expensive perfume that now seemed a little bit pathetic. Olivia, the princess of opulence, the darling of the social scene, the one who'd always been so confident, so untouchable, was now. She was a mess. Her carefully crafted facade had shattered, revealing the fragile, insecure woman beneath. She paced the empty boutique, her designer shoes clicking on the hardwood floors, her perfectly manicured hands trembling as she clutched her phone, desperately trying to salvage what was left of her crumbling empire. Hello, she shrieked into the phone, her voice cracking with panic. "I need more inventory, anything, just get me something." Her suppliers, the ones who'd once been so eager to cater to her exclusive clientele, now ignored her calls, their silence deafening, their lack of support a clear indication of her plummeting status. She tried to contact her investors, the wealthy socialites who'd once flocked to her opulence, eager to be a part of her success. They were unavailable, of course. Their assistants mumbled excuses. Their secretaries offered vague apologies. Their lack of interest a clear sign that they'd abandoned ship. "They can't do this to me," she wailed, her voice echoing through the empty boutique. "I built this. I deserve this. They promised. They'd promised her a life of luxury, a life of success, a life that was built on a foundation of lies. The reality was setting in, slowly, painfully, crushing her with its weight. She was losing everything: her business, her reputation, her carefully constructed identity as the queen of opulence. The media vultures circled, of course. The gossip columns gleefully chronicled her downfall. The news channels aired segments about her financial woes. The public, who'd once adored her, now turned against her, their fickle loyalty replaced by a healthy dose of schadenfreude. "Olivia's opulence from riches to rags," the headline screamed. "Fashion fiasco, boutique bombs. Is karma finally catching up with Olivia Winters?" She tried to deny the allegations, to blame others, to spin the narrative in her favor. But it was too late. The truth was out, the evidence was overwhelming, the jig was up. Her parents, realizing the extent of her financial troubles, tried to help, of course. They offered what little they had left, a desperate attempt to bail her out, to save her from the consequences of her actions. But it wasn't enough. Their own financial woes, their own shaky foundation, their own past mistakes had left them vulnerable, exposed, and basically broke. Olivia watched, her eyes wide with panic, her face pale with fear, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her, piece by agonizing piece. She was losing everything, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The realization was crushing, the desperation palpable, the downfall complete. Okay, so the reckoning. It wasn't a courtroom drama, not a public shaming, more like a quiet implosion. A slow, agonizing realization that their carefully constructed world, their comfortable life, their sense of entitlement was built on a foundation of, let's just say it wasn't exactly solid ground. My parents, bless their misguided hearts, were finally facing the consequences of their actions. They'd stolen my future. They'd funded Olivia's opulence. They'd basically gambled everything on a daughter who was, let's just say she wasn't exactly known for her financial acumen. And now they were paying the price. They'd emptied their savings, of course. They'd mortgaged the house. They'd taken out loans. They'd basically thrown everything they had at Olivia's sinking ship, hoping to keep her afloat. But it wasn't enough. The hole was too big, the damage too extensive. The ship was already sinking, and their desperate attempts to bail it out were just delaying the inevitable. The bank calls started, of course. The polite reminders, the increasingly stern warnings, the final notices that their house, their symbol of stability, their last bastion of comfort was about to be, let's just say it wasn't exactly going to be theirs anymore. The panic set in, of course, the frantic phone calls, the hushed conversations, the growing realization that they were losing everything. Their comfortable life, their social standing, their carefully constructed image of success was crumbling around them. "What are we going to do?" my mother wailed, her voice trembling, her face pale with fear. "We have nothing left? We're going to be homeless?" My father, the man who'd always projected an air of confidence, of control, of being the one in charge, was now. He was a shadow of his former self. His shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with a mix of fear, and let's just say it wasn't exactly remorse. "It's all my fault," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I should have listened to you, Elena. I should have. Well, he should have been a better father, a better husband, a better person. But it was too late for regrets. The damage was done. The consequences were unavoidable. The reckoning was upon them. And as I watched, as I listened to their panicked whispers, their desperate pleas, their agonizing realization that their actions had consequences, I couldn't help but feel a surge of, let's just say it wasn't exactly sympathy. It was something more, something colder, something that felt a lot like justice.